I'm just saying, hypocritical much?
Hypocritical.
Thank you. Thank you for going with me.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims from HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me as always today is Donna Grindle of Card and Compliance. How is it going today, Donna?
It is going fantastic, David.
Awesome. So we're quickly approaching, as we're recording, the holidays. As a matter of fact, tomorrow is Turkey Day. Super excited.
I know. You probably knock everybody out of the way for the leg, don't you? Are you more of a breast man?
I'm a breast man, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got more meat on it. So, although it is something like really cool about walking around with that big, huge turkey leg in your hand. But I never know do I really want to take a bite out of it, or do I want to just club somebody with it?
There goes the caveman part.
Yeah, I guess it is. It's like when you go to like the state fair, they have that big, huge turkey leg.
Yeah.
That's so cool. It's like, reminiscent of what Fred Flintstone had when he was
yeah,
in the
Renaissance
cartoons.
Festival, you always see the people walking around trying to be really into their character. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ripping the meat off.
Yeah. That'll be
yeah. That's the Renaissance Festival. Everybody should go to one, at least.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It is.
So today we're going to dive into a topic that we've kind of seen crop up here lately, which is the fact that there are more people than the OCRs and the HHSs asking about your HIPAA compliance. And we're seeing more people digging into what are you doing around compliance and what are you doing around keeping their data safe and the privacy and the security and all that. It's really becoming a lot more commonplace than what people may expect. So we want to talk about that some today. So I know you kind of gave it a name. You said that it was like ooze.
Yeah, it's ooze.
Like
it's oozing into all the little nooks and crannies it can find. Yeah, because we gotten calls before from a software company saying, "Hey, we're doing this startup, and we wanted to talk to you about doing some consulting for us. Down the road, once we work out our plans and our funding, would you do some consulting for us to do HIPAA compliance?" And I look at their plan, and it has nothing to do with HIPAA. They're like, it's the closest thing we can find to giving us the rules of security.
Mm-hmm.
And but now there's the cybersecurity framework, but still, it only addresses the security part of it, not necessarily privacy rules and what you should be doing with the information that you have. So yes, it is ooze, like the Mutant Ninja Turtle ooze. It turns
it turns
us into Mutant Ninja Turtles. You and I are Mutant Ninja Turtles
because
it oozed over us a long time ago. And it's nuclear waste.
Yeah. Yeah, you've always had that.
So
I just recently read an article, as a matter of fact, kind of side note, that the financial industry is looking at something much more akin to HIPAA compliance I know they have FINRA and some of the other things, but they're looking at what they can do to better secure and put privacy on things and come out with fines as well.
Well, I can see that you've read your show notes thoroughly, David.
I've not read them.
I know. Because that's in there.
Okay, so I just want to make sure you knew that.
So proud of yourself because you read something, but it wasn't the show notes, right?
Look, we've covered this before. Too much preparation just makes things dull.
Oh, well. See,
so,
people?
Since I went straight to the end.
Don't you wish you were me, people? Trying to be the mature adult one.
Just because you're older doesn't.
Don't go there. So, young David, since I'm old and you are so young.
At least you didn't call me a Padawan.
Well, you're the gray one. That's all I'm saying. I not so much.
Yeah, you can do amazing things in bottles.
I ain't never touched it. Even my hairdresser will tell you. Because, your hairdresser knows it all. All right. Enough of the madness. Here's what brought this topic for me to develop show notes for apparently only me to read. Is we had a client that we're working with, and they said, well, we're about to do a URAC audit, which is a Utilization Review Accreditation Commission, which they will accredit firms to show that they're going to do what they're supposed to do for patient care. And this particular company was involved in patient care. And this audit gets done. They change the rules like every 3 years. And it was time for them to do another audit with the new stuff. They get the new stuff because they were going to do work with us on an assessment and doing all this other stuff. As soon as they finished this audit, they get the new stuff and it's got HIPAA questions all over it. And they're like, whoa, 3 years ago, it did not have any of this. Now, there's all kinds of stuff about what's in your risk analysis and all these other things. So we then suddenly leapt in front so that we could give them a latest and greatest version of everything. They had stuff, but again, just like you and I've talked about before, we go in and what people have tends to be the checklist and the spreadsheets and, not a report or, so they tried, they just didn't really know or have good advice on how to do it. And we're hoping our advice is better than that. But the URAC audit now has specific HIPAA questions in it. So if you are about to do a URAC audit, you might want to get your HIPAA ducks in a row. But at that point, we started paying attention. Hey, this is happening. And then we start hearing from other clients where they're glad they're working with us because there's multiple requests for compliance and security program information with their new prospects. So it's BAs selling into the healthcare arena, and they're suddenly getting multiple reviews of, you told me this, I want more detail. You told me this, I want more detail. And thankfully, there are people that are working with us already, and they haven't even had to call us because they have the information. Mm-hmm. But that due diligence that we talked about in a previous episode 24.
Yep, we did.
To be AA.
Or not to be AA.
To bah, or not to bah. That point of why you need to do that is starting to really come home to roost, so to speak, for all of those who have not been doing what they're supposed to do on the BA side. And people get burned once and they start checking everybody. Or they hear about somebody close to them that gets burned and they start checking everybody.
Yeah, because I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say very few, but there's a good number of people out there that tout HIPAA compliance and say they're HIPAA compliant and put it on their website and all that they're so far from HIPAA compliant, it's not funny.
If you don't ask the questions, you don't know. And it's sometimes I'm shocked with the answers we get from people who say they're HIPAA compliant. Mm-hmm. And I'm not looking for people to be perfect. I mean, I don't say that I'm perfect. There's constantly more I should do. I should review this policy. I should audit this thing a third time. I only did it twice. There's those kind of things, but we're getting it done. We're staying on top of it. But a lot of people, you and I both know, would they think that we're overkill or we're trying to sell them things they don't need? Or if I was trying to sell people things they don't need, I would probably be richer. I would be rich, not where I am. Hey, I give it all away like this podcast.
Well, you bring up a good point because I've actually heard this argument from some MSPs in that if HIPAA compliance is so difficult to maintain, I won't say obtain, but maintain, because you can be compliant today and not tomorrow, then some people just don't see the point in the effort that it takes to do that. But at the same time, you have to keep doing the work of HIPAA day in and day out. And yes, you could be non-compliant tomorrow and then compliant again the next day. And then, it can really go back and forth a lot on some of the nuances and things that you have to do. But the point is, you just have to keep doing it day in and day out. You have to keep doing the work of HIPAA.
Yeah, it's called being aware.
Mm-hmm.
And, the MSPs, they have an option to not focus on healthcare. Well, I'm just not going to do healthcare.
To a degree.
Yeah, they end up in it because they do an accounting firm that does healthcare and reminding them of that.
Yeah, or a law firm or a insurance office. It's starting to get to where you can't hardly get away from it.
Yeah, that whole I'm just not going to do it kind of goes to the wayside. But some businesses have no other option. Their entire business model is built into the healthcare industry.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping in mind that your prospects are now going to start asking you these questions and your longtime clients are going to come back around. So you never know when their annual re-up review is or when something happens in their offices to cause them to review things and they ask you questions. You're just going to get that, and then they're going to start asking you over and over. And we certainly we'll have clients that call us up and say, can you please call and talk to these people and try to figure out why they're not answering our due diligence. They'll send them out, and if anything is not happening, they keep trying, and more than not, we somehow end up involved in either reviewing answers that aren't necessarily what you're expecting to see, or there's no answers at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, can you convince them they need to do this? And now my favorite are where we get the BAs who say, well, I'm not doing this. I don't have to do this. And then like the CEO calls them up and says, yeah, you're gonna do it. Click. Next thing you know, somebody's super cooperative because they're going to lose that huge client if they don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
But that's what it takes sometimes to get their attention. Now, the other area where it's starting to creep in is, we have people, like I mentioned, the startup that's not HIPAA, but HIPAA is becoming a thing that venture capitalists are going to start asking about when they're funding your startup that's a healthcare startup.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the Health IT Leadership Conference, we were actively involved in conversations with people who either educate or connect people to money to fund these health IT segment, whether it's medical devices or software, hardware, whatever. They're starting to think maybe we should be on top of this.
Yeah. And we just recently had a member at HIPAA for MSPs that I won't go into a lot of detail, but he basically is in the process of looking at purchasing another IT company, and the other IT company has some healthcare clients. And so he started digging into what are you doing around compliance, and do you have business associate agreements and all that stuff. And come to find out, the current IT company is not doing anything at all around HIPAA. And so now the IT company that is looking to purchase is having to ask the questions and make the decision as to whether or not they want to even take on that responsibility and liability.
Oh, yeah. And I was just, it didn't even occur to me how that could be helpful to the IT companies we work with under the HIPAA for MSPs membership, but it is absolutely key. So you could want to merge with another company and they're going to ask you for it, or sell and they're going to ask you for it. And in this case, he was saying, look, you're going to need to sign some sort of a release of liability and take on that liability. But clearly it mattered to him, and he would have never even known to ask if he hadn't been working with us. He told us that. So be aware that you should be asking if you're looking at companies that are doing work in healthcare, if for merging or purchasing or whatever you're wanting to do. Make sure you're asking them what they're doing, because you're buying a liability if you don't, clarify that on the front end.
Mm-hmm. And I think the next stage of people that we're going to see question things is going to be the patients themselves, as we start seeing more patients actually shopping for healthcare.
Right.
Those questions of compliance are certainly going to come up. And I've said this before, but I see all the time on some of these web feeds and news feeds and all that. I see people asking questions about, did my doctor violate my, HIPAA compliance, or did the nurse do that, or they're asking questions. They're wanting to know what those responsibilities are and what the liabilities are, and how they can address those things. Because if somebody violated their privacy or security of their information, then they want to go after them.
Oh, yeah. And I do my best to try to answer questions on Quora, Quora. It's a website where you can just go out there and post questions and people will answer them. And I periodically will make a stab at making sure I'm answering some questions about HIPAA, because I got sent there for something about 4 or 5 months ago, and there was some not good information out there.
Yeah, that's the bad thing about any of those forums is there's a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of experts that you better vet them a little bit. Why are you an expert? So I countered some of the quote unquote experts in HIPAA in one of the conversations, but then I, started paying a little bit of attention. It's not something I spend a lot of time on, but from time to time I'll answer them. And there are regularly ones where people are starting to ask, is this a violation of HIPAA? Should they be allowed to do this? Are they able to do this? I was explaining to somebody, you're at things all the time, and they're like, oh, well, what do you do? Well, I do compliance, privacy and security compliance consulting. We help people who need to protect your healthcare information, manage and build programs to do it. And she kind of looked at me a little sideways, and I said, when you go to the doctor and you have to sign I always use, you have to sign the little thing that says, here's what we can do. She's like, oh yeah, it's the thing that says, here's all the things we can't do with your information, but then down at the bottom it says we're going to do it anyway. Which I was impressed that she had read it to some extent, and clearly she didn't understand it because it's legalese and most people don't. However, she had read it, which means more people are going to start reading those things and paying attention to those things. And we did an previous episode on, can I be sued under HIPAA? And that's going to come out. That's going to start happening because they're starting to learn those things.
Right.
But when you get all of these ratings on Rate Your Doctor stuff, and, that was my thing of, you have to ask, do you really work spectacular miracles, so much so that your patients will be willing to give up their privacy? Because if they start asking you what you're doing and you just flip them off, blow them off. Oh yeah, not flip them off. Sorry.
You can do that too.
That's what I do to you, David.
I'm sure.
But if you just blow them off and say, oh yeah, we do it. And eventually they're not going to just take you at your word.
Yeah.
It's hard for me now. I don't know about you, but anytime I see something that shouldn't be happening, it makes me a nervous wreck. I just want to jump up and guard the area.
Yeah. I've got a few that I've walked in on doctors' offices that I'm not doing their IT work or compliance, and I walk in and it's just, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to get to a point to where people are going to be able to recognize, they're not going to be HIPAA experts, but I think they're going to recognize enough to where they can walk in and within a few minutes of standing there decide, well, you know what, I really don't want to give my personal information to this group. I think I'll go down the road to the next guy.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, it's already out there. I don't have to worry about it. Okay. If you already were caught in, say, the Anthem breach, which 80 million people, pretty much all of us, were somehow caught in that.
Raise my hand.
But that doesn't mean that all your information was in that breach. That doesn't mean that all your medical information is there, but the next time it might be. And, we're doing another episode on medical identity theft to really explain what kinds of things can happen, but that we haven't recorded yet, so we won't talk about it. I better shut up because we're getting these things packed out now in our plan, and we never know when we're going to actually release things versus record them. I love it though; it's fun.
Yeah. So, do you think? What do you think about the possibility of employees that are going from one practice to another? Trying to dig into what a practice is doing before they even take a job.
We certainly do get calls, and you've gotten them recently, where we've been jointly helping some people who come in as administrators, at management level, and they find a mess, and they're like, "What have I done? What have I got myself into? And I need some help." And so
that's usually all they say when I answer the phone. The first words out of the mouth is "help."
I think I need some help. So yeah, it was clearly more than they had anticipated because they didn't ask the questions. And you're going to hear more and more people about that. And another thing is, think about, you often hear about practices, they're going to add a provider.
Right.
And these providers come in and they have either built into their contract, usually some sort of revenue sharing, expense sharing, a path to partnership. These are big deal kind of things that these contracts include. And what if they start asking, and now you can't hire a new provider because they don't want any part of having to pay for that breach?
Right.
Or that audit or that investigation or the fines or any of that stuff. Because, we talk about the settlements and how long they take. What was that one that we did on the OMG, CAP, OCR?
Yeah, what, 3 years or so?
Yeah, I think the breach happened in 2012 and they settled this year.
Yeah. But that's, it really, and I don't want to get on a pedestal here because I can, but.
Preach! Here he is. He's preaching again.
Well, I think one of the things that frustrates me, maybe because I'm on the other end of it, but it frustrates me to go in and see the problems that practices have, know that you can get them to where they need to be, and the only thing they want to discuss is how much is this going to cost. And I understand that there's a delicate balance between finances and what's bringing in money and what's not, and cost. I get all that. I'm a business owner as well. But when when you got people that are throwing money to, multiple tens of thousands of dollars for advertising, or you're going out and you're buying, new cars, or you're doing, remodeling your office, or all these things and you can't put a few $1,000s a year into something that could protect you to the point of you not getting sued into oblivion,
right,
or going to jail. I just, this frustrating. And it's not frustrating because I can't, somebody doesn't want to open up the wallet. It's frustrating because that you can get them to where they need to be so they can sleep good at night and be in business for the next 20 years. And they relegate that down to, I don't want to spend a little bit of money. That's what's frustrating.
Well, and it's not even that, is I care so little about what could happen to my business and my patients and my employees. I don't want to spend the money.
Yeah, that's another part of it as well.
And that's what bothers me more than anything is you're not realizing, or you're choosing not to acknowledge or something, that this is about your business, your patients, your employees. This can affect everybody. It's a ripple effect when these things go horribly awry. So to say, I'm not even going to try. And we always say, don't get us wrong. Like, if you do these things we tell you to do, it doesn't mean it's not going to get a breach. What it means is it will be less painful. It will be easier to respond to because you'll be prepared. Your patients may have better protections. There's a lot of things, because they always say it's not if, it's when. And we go along with that. We agree. It's not if, it's when. So to think that it's more important for me to not be concerned with that because I'm going to be concerned with something else. This is the foundation of your business. And IT is now the foundation of pretty much any small business. There's a few that don't have to have the computers, like the contractors where they're all 60 years old. Maybe they don't have to use them, but I bet they have smartphones.
Yeah.
But that whole attitude, I agree with you. It's so frustrating to have people say things like, well, this $3,000 quote that you've given us for a whole year's worth of work, the doctor doesn't want to pay that much. That's way too much money. But you can't meet with the doctor for 2 weeks because they're going to be in Italy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it goes even beyond healthcare. So, my little tirade is not just about the doctor's offices. It's about the IT companies, the copier companies, the business associates. It's the same. You get the same attitude from some of them as well, that it's just not important enough. They don't want to spend the money, which the way I see it is an investment. I don't see it as an expense.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I do that because it makes it easier to swallow, but I just don't want to be on the wall of shame. I don't want to be in an audit. I don't want to be fined massive amounts of money. It just makes sense to me, especially coming from a healthcare perspective where they tell you that it's, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and this is the exact thing.
Oh yeah. If you're mad at your patients because they're not following the diet or the directions that you give them, and then you're totally ignoring your obligation to protect their information while you're telling them this, I'm just saying, hypocritical much?
Hypocritical?
Thank you. Thank you for going with me.
Oh, I got you.
So now that we can get down, okay, step down, plunk, plunk,
right,
off.
Yep.
Here you go, off the soapbox. Let's really, man.
Right, everybody turn the volume back up. We're done.
But for those of you who do follow the rules and who are trying to do this, know that we respect you and support you.
Absolutely. I applaud you. I was sitting there.
Oh, God. More sound effects, please. So with that in mind, we do want to point out that, if you're doing the work, remember you need to stick with it because it's going to keep getting bigger. We also talked about how we know that things are going to change over 2016. I think there's a lot that's going to change in the enforcement of HIPAA compliance requirements. And we know that the big thing that terrifies me is I don't want to be responsible for a breach that could lead to, technically, people could die, and people don't get that. To me, that's what matters. And I think that's why you and I, yes, as you said earlier, HIPAA's boring, but I love doing the work of helping people.
Yep.
And we're helping those who are trying to protect the patient's information. So in essence, we are helping the patients, and we're helping lots and lots of them.
Absolutely.
But one other point, and this brings us back around to the very beginning, because I had this at the end, as we mentioned before. Not only is, we're talking about how it's being requested more and more within people with healthcare, but it is going further outside it. In episode 15, we talked about it's not just about HIPAA anymore. There's other things where it's being brought in, which now you can talk some more about your financial firm. HIPAA-esque, what was the article? It was on, well, we'll put the link on the site, but it was in a Value Walk. So it's financial firms take note, HIPAA-esque IT encryption regulations and big fines are coming so, it wasn't one of those just grab your attention with something squirrely titles. And reading the article, it's coming down the pipe for financial firms and anybody connected to healthcare, which we know now is really sprawling, and more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just there's so much damage that can be done with the data that is now available that it's just the responsibility of it. It's what is that they said on the Spider-Man movie? With great power comes great responsibility. When you have the power of having all this data now in front of you, And so the responsibility is that you have to protect that. And the fortunate thing is that, especially for the smaller practices, is that it's really not terribly difficult if you just, get a handle on it and do things the right way. It's not as difficult as it would be in a big hospital environment.
We had somebody say that had been learning from us that, once you get used to doing it, it's really not that bad. You just do it.
Right.
So we have it.
I think that brings us to the end of this episode. So thank you for listening today, and thanks for standing by as I went on my little tirade. We ask you to head over to iTunes and leave us a review, and also share this on your social media channels. We would absolutely love to get more listeners and to get the information out there because it helps everybody. You can visit us on our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. You can also leave a question right there on the front page, and we may even feature your question on a future podcast. So remember, for Donna and I, as we go out to eat a bunch of turkey tomorrow, just remember that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.